it doesn't really make much sense to buy something unless you know you're using it on a regular basis. And pretty much the only thing that I've used are just because of the different ranges of jobs that we've had is my pickup truck.
What is happening, Skid Steer Nation? New week, new episode, and I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today, Luke. He's doing some cool things that I think are really cool, and you guys could really learn a lot from today. Before I introduce Luke, I do want to remind all of you that this show is brought to you by skidsteernation.com. In addition to this amazing content we create and send out to you guys, we also sell skid steer attachments, and they're only made in the United States of America. So if you're looking for your next attachment and you enjoy our content, please check out skidsteernation.com and see our wide variety of attachments to help you do your work faster and make more money. Luke, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we've got today, I kind of did a poor introduction for you. I apologize. We got Luke Fielder today. He is from Burns, Tennessee, and he owns a company called TriStar Land Solutions. He's been around. You've been in the industry for over 20 years, right? But you and your wife have owned the business for a little over 2 years.
Correct. Yeah. We started our own business in end of January of 2022. But yeah, before that, I started operating equipment just right out of high school as a summer job, just because I didn't really exactly know what I was wanting to do, but I knew I had to make money somehow. And it was, I kind of went a little, a few other options, here and there, but I always went back to operating equipment. I just loved it. It was fun to me.
I mean, what kid doesn't want to play in the dirt?
Exactly. Well, whenever I was really young, back then you didn't have to have the car seats as much as they are now, and so I'd be able to look up over the window, and my mom would always say I wanted to dig ditches whenever I got older, or whenever I grew up.
And Grandpa always said the world needs ditch diggers too, right?
Right.
If he only knew what you could charge to dig a ditch these days.
Oh man, it's ridiculous. I wish more people knew that though.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm going to go slightly off topic here. I just feel compelled to do it. And I don't know if you can feel free to weigh in on all this, but we are recording this episode 2 days after the presidential election here in 2024. And I do not want to get political as far as the parties go, but I do want to say that my faith is restored in the process, because I had a lot of questions 4 years ago with all those ballots and the harvests and the drop-off boxes. And this year, I felt like we got a fair, free American election, regardless of the outcome of which party you wanted. The process was restored, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely seems like things were being held back for sure as a business owner. Looking at it through that aspect, it does seem like people have a little bit more faith in the economy. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and he was nominated 2 days ago, or he won the election 2 days ago, so we're not going to see any changes right away. But I went to bed that night going, even if it would have been the other way around, where she was winning 5 million in the popular vote and 300, I mean, watching the process state by state, I was confident in the results we were getting were actually the results the American people wanted.
Yeah, I mean it definitely went the way that the voters wanted for sure. I'd say.
And I did not feel that way in 2020. I mean, there was 15 extra million votes over the last 25-year period in 2020. Like, do we really have that big of a turnout? So, yeah. No conspiracy theories.
Well, I've got my own theories, and I don't know. There's been a lot of lost faith so far here in the past decade.
But it's a great day to be an American this week, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
The process was restored, which, fair, free, and elections, like that's the whole bedrock of this country. So I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, let's get back on topic here. I don't want to pull no Andy Frisella or Charlie Kirk on everybody out there. So
I'm very uneducated about a lot of this stuff just because it seems like it just adds more drama. And I've tried to cut out a lot of the things that aren't directly impactful towards us. We have enough going on and for us to focus on. And so we'll make it whichever way it goes. And that's all we can really do anyways.
Yeah, I agree with you, Luke. I mean, I literally stopped watching the news for I don't know how many months leading up to the election, because all it does is work you up, whether in a positive light or a negative light, but it doesn't do anything for you. And the results were going to be the results, whether I watch that news channel or not.
Exactly. Yeah. And and it's been proven, there's been stuff proven that, everything's not necessarily always what it seems to be whenever they present that stuff. As far as the news, I try to, I've not really watched the news in years. I don't,
Yeah.
like I said, I just try to block all the negative stuff out and try to focus on my day to day, be a good person, be nice to your fellow neighbor. And that's all that really matters.
I mean, the 10 commandments aren't too bad, are they?
No, not at all.
If more people would just read them and go, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, you and your wife started this 2 years ago. And one of the things I noticed is that you said you do not own any equipment yet.
Correct. It's not really, it doesn't really make much sense to buy something unless you're using it on a regular basis, and pretty much the only thing that I've used so far, just because of the different ranges of jobs that we've had, is my pickup truck. And that's about it. And so,
I mean,
that's really the only thing that I see necessary to own right now. Cause, just like multiple people said it before, and renting equipment, there's no maintenance or anything like that to keep up with. And whenever you're done with it, you're not still paying for that payment, where it's sitting for a month because you don't need that particular piece of equipment.
yeah.
And, our jobs, they range from, they have ranged from anything where I need like a 40,000 pound dozer to, all the way down to, just a 8,000 pound skid or mini X,
I noticed
And
that
so,
when I was ex-girlfriend scrolling your Facebook page. That's what I like to call it when I'm always checking guys out before the interviews. But I noticed that you're in a very wide variety of projects, from pretty large week-long, 2-week-long projects down to smaller projects. And you're seeing, like you said, the dozers, the large excavators, the skid steers, the mini excavators. So it's not like you don't buy it because you're just doing a job here or a job there. Like, you're doing some very large projects. You're just found a way to minimize your exposure every month.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense financially. I mean, it's tough enough anyways, because the companies that I worked for before, just kind of going back a little bit, and the reason and why we haven't bought anything is because so the companies I worked for before were larger companies that either did jobs anywhere from building highways, industrial work, to multi-home subdivisions, and so I actually never worked on a single home project until we started our own business, and it was a major difference. It's the same concept, but there are two completely different jobs. And
You hear that a
so,
lot.
yeah, absolutely. And so, and that's actually been kind of a struggle for me, just because I know things are supposed to be done a certain way, and yeah, you can fudge here and there, especially, comparing to a lot of the contractors in our area. And from what it sounds like, it seems like it's just in our area sometimes, but listening to different podcasts and stuff like that, everybody's struggling with it. You've always got Chuck and a truck and a skid steer. Um,
As long
and
as Cat's
so,
got 0% financing, you're going to have that.
yeah, exactly. But what I learned from those larger companies, whenever you're bidding jobs, you always base your rent, or you always base your equipment prices on rental rates no matter what. Because if you're on a job and even if you own the piece of equipment and that equipment goes down, you still have to replace that piece of equipment and be able to provide it to be able to complete the task at hand. And so you've got to be able to have the money allowed for it to replace that piece of equipment. And which normally on larger jobs, if you do have to rent a piece of equipment, which is going to be a bigger piece of equipment, you don't base it on a daily or a weekly price rate or a rate. It's usually based on a monthly rate, broken down in an hourly rate. And so that's the way we've handled everything.
So one of the things you talk about, and we're kind of leaning to this topic, so I just want to kind of shift it right there now. You've gotten really good at estimating and knowing your costs and being pretty accurate at the end of projects with that. So like, what's your process for that? Like, do you like walk me through that a little bit if you're willing to?
Yeah. So a lot of it is just knowledge and being in the industry and knowing what all it takes, and and just looking at it at ground level. Anyways, you kind of have a good idea of how long it's going to take, what pieces of equipment you're going to have, what how many operators, what type of operators, and so we've got everything broke down to an hourly rate, individual operators, individual pieces of equipment, and then we just add that together on what I believe as my best educated guess on how long it's going to take. And
So I don't mean to cut you out, but like, so do you have like a master spreadsheet that you have that tallies all that information based on the input that you give it?
yeah, so I do. Yes, I do now. I do finally, and that's made things so much easier. If it wasn't for Chat GPT, I don't believe I would have ever been able to figure it out. It was already pretty much a completed spreadsheet, um, an Excel spreadsheet, but I did some tweaking here and there and got it dialed in really well for specifically us, and it uh it has helped out tremendously.
So if somebody's out there listening to this and they're struggling with knowing their costs or building out that breakdown, missing their profit margins on projects, and they wanted to follow in your footsteps and build some sort of a personal calculator for them to build to help them estimate and do their jobs, like what are the main categories that you would have in that spreadsheet, and what are a few of the line items that you think are the most important in those categories?
So we have so our categories are the way we charge. We have a total labor cost, total equipment cost, total materials. I think trucking, which deliveries, and then subcontractors, which we don't hire a lot of subcontractors. Every now and then, like if there's somebody that's wanting a pad poured after we're done, I've got a concrete guy that we use to recommend, but we usually just let them handle their own bids after that. But um, as we scale and grow, I'm sure that will definitely be used a lot more, for curb and gutter, asphalt, stuff like that. But um, and then going to the line items that we'll list in our bids will be like the number one line item is always mobilization, because that's part of your cost. Um,
Do you show
and
that
it's
as a line item on your estimates, or are you hiding that number in your total project cost?
so I show the mobilization costs. When we do our bids, we do have a hidden sheet that we have for indirect costs, like you know, uh, pickup truck usage or foreman's time or whatever for just getting ready for the job. For surveying, stuff like that, because we don't list surveying as a line item, but we'll list that in our indirect costs, and it is hidden and it's spread out among all the other line items.
Yep.
um and in what we do, in site development, typically it's our line items are mobilization, clearing or grubbing, stripping topsoil, excavation, and there's a lot of things that are in each one of those. Whether it's going to take just a skid steer to strip topsoil, or whether it's going to take a trackhoe, a dozer, and a dump truck to haul it to the stockpile. And all that stuff's not necessarily listed out individually that they see on the line item, but we have a second page below that also coordinates with each line item, that's numbered coordinating with each line item, and kind of gives us a scope of work for that.
I love that.
Yeah, and like I know one of the podcasts that I listened to of yours, I think you had said something about listing hourly rates. That's something we try not to do, just because we've learned our lesson on that. Because, like you said before, you always have that one guy out there that sits out there on the four wheeler and watches you every day. And well, you had it listed here that is going to take you 8 hours. Well, you only ran the piece of equipment 4 hours, and that's not necessarily what that means. So
I also had a
we
chainsaw in
started
my hand the other 4 hours. They don't see that.
exactly, or yeah, or checking grade, yeah, setting stakes, checking grade, stuff like that. That doesn't work that way. So we started breaking it down more into volumes or measurements, either square footage, cubic yardage, tons, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think anything you can do to get away from just an hourly rate,
Yeah,
whether you do flat base project costing or basing it off volumes the way you're doing it, or
yeah, and I give credit to that to a lot of the bigger companies I did work for, which I didn't. I only made it up to a superintendent position. I wanted to be able to get hired to gain more knowledge before we were kind of thrown into owning our own business. It wasn't necessarily a planned thing, but that was one of the few things I did pick up on as far as the how to bid and how to charge for each individual item that is used, that is a cost associated with work.
yeah. And I'm a firm believer, especially if you're focusing on residential customers. I think sometimes that overwhelms them. Like they have a problem, they want to know how much it's going to cost to get that problem, and they want to make sure that what their problem is and how you're going to solve it. So I think it's an amazing thing to have that back end spreadsheet or calculator or however somebody does it to get your numbers dialed in. But you don't need to translate all those line items into an estimate, in my opinion, to like especially a residential customer. You just need to like outline the scope of work, speak in layman terms, and give them a number that they know it's going to cost for them to have that project completed. Is the way I view it.
Yeah, yeah, especially for like single home residential projects, and it's actually something we're actually trying to get away from, just because it's always seems like the smaller the job, the bigger the headaches associated
That's
with it.
true.
And also, even with single home contractors doing jobs for them, obviously they're always trying to get the cheapest price, and even if they do value quality, you can turn your bid into them. They're still like, well, can you take this down? Can you bring this down? And all this and that. I'm like, well, we can if we change the scope of work. And
100%.
I mean, there's no other way. We've been a lot of the lessons, a lot of the things that we know, we learn the hard way. A bought lesson is always the hardest learned.
But those are the ones that
Um,
stick the longest.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, and people, we've been compared to other people, and they're like, man, y'all are just so high. I'm like, well, we're accounting for everything that goes into it, and it matters. And there's been multiple times we've had phone calls back after we've turned a bid in. We got somebody else to come do it, and then we got called back.
Yep. I was literally having this conversation with a contractor this morning, and he's a septic contractor, and he's like, I am by far the most expensive contractor in my area. He's like, I've talked to my competitors, I've talked to customers, I've seen estimates from other contractors. And he's like, it's not even close. He's like, I don't know how they're making money at those prices. And I said, and we just kept talking, and it was just like, know your numbers, know your margins, and then provide the value to the customer. He's like, yeah, but we're also the only one that does a final grade and grass seed and straw. Like, so we're adding all that extra value to it. So, but I love that there's no value in being the second cheapest or the
No,
second most expensive.
right? Yeah, it's and that's another thing too. Like, you gotta be you can't be too butthurt about if a customer doesn't hire you, because whenever their bottom line is the dollar amount, it's not going to matter anyways. I mean, you got to be able to choose your customers also.
And that's where like we preach pre-qualifying questions before you even do a site visit. Like you should
Yeah.
know if they're budget conscious before you even drive to their property.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's what are there's three options and you can only pick two.
Yeah,
Uh,
cheap, fast, and good.
yeah. Yeah, that
I
don't
actually
happen.
I actually told a contractor 2 days ago on one of the coaching calls for groundbreaking growth. He was having that same issue with a client. I said, literally take a piece of paper out, draw 3 boxes, and next to each box, write cheap, fast, quality, or good. And I said, and then hand in the pen and say, check mark 2 of them, and we'll go from there. He's like, would you
Hmm.
really do that? I'm like, well, you've been fighting with this customer for an hour and a half over gold star service for copper pricing. I'm like, yeah, I would absolutely do that at this point in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It matters. It makes a huge difference also. Um,
Yeah.
we've we've learned that lesson as well. Tried to make things work for somebody just because we were trying to get jobs, just trying to get money, revenue rolling through, and that's not necessarily always the best thing to do either. Sometimes you can get yourself in a pretty big jam just trying to get revenue to roll through.
Now, let me
And
ask you
then,
this question because it's from my personal experience, but those jobs that you're talking about that you took for revenue, did you have that gut feeling that this may not be a great fit for me?
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Your gut never lies.
It never, and that's
You're,
I think I'm definitely the more gutsy one out of me and my wife. And she's like, I don't know about this. I'm like, no, this is it's either no good at all or I really think we should go with it. But I mean, now I'm not saying that I've never made a mistake because I've definitely made plenty of them on this journey for sure. But uh, it's definitely helped us out, and as long as you can not look at it as a why me point of view instead of what I learned from this one, I feel like it's still valuable.
yeah. And the more you grow, literally, the more problems you're going to have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we're working on, so we're not licensed yet either at this time, but we're about to turn in all our application and stuff to the state so we can be a specialty licensed contractor.
That's
Um,
awesome.
Yeah, and I think that'll definitely help our situation. We've done um we've done one commercial job when we first started. Now, I think at that point we were a little too naive and to really know what was going on. But as far as the project itself, that was probably the smoothest running project because it was a little bit more in line of where I'm used to doing the jobs that I'm used to doing versus these little single family home projects. And it's not the customer's fault. They're not around construction every day. They don't know what pricing is like on a normal basis, and they just don't know. And so whenever you get two bids that are, one of them's like $4,000, the other one's $6,000, and ours is like 12,500, that's a big gap. But they don't have anybody else that's seems like they don't have anybody else to compare our bid to. And I always try to relay, compare apples to apples. But whenever the numbers are that drastic, it always seems like we've sorry, maybe next time or something like that. But we've also had those are the ones that we've had multiple calls from as well.
Yeah. And then I, I had a friend send me estimates for a project that he collected that he did a job and it was like a $10,000 grading and driveway repair job. It was it was a big one for 10 grand for a driveway. But there was two other bids and one was 6,000 and one was 4,000 for the exact same project. But then when you looked at the estimates, like you can see why the customer chose the $10,000 estimate because it was
Hmm.
detailed. You knew exactly what you were getting. Like there was comfort level in knowing that this guy wasn't going to work for a day and disappear.
Right. Yeah, and to me that's and the way we put our bids together, I always try to look at the most expensive route possible. And if there's things that we can shave off, whenever it comes down to the actual time to do the job, we absolutely will. And I try to translate that to customers as much as possible. Um, but like I said before, whenever the amount is their is their goal, there's nothing really you can do a whole lot about that.
No, but like you said earlier, not every customer is yours, and you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Absolutely.
What's that
Absolutely.
old saying? Like it's the Pareto's 80-20 rule. I talk about it all the time. But like 80%, if you go back and look at your books for 2024, 80% of your profits are going to come from your top 20% clients, and 80%
Hmm.
of your headaches are going to come from your bottom 20% clients.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
It's like, what were the similarities of those shitty customers? How do we not say yes to people like that moving forward?
Yeah. And that's something that I think I'm kind of conflicted whenever it comes to stuff like that, because I'm uh I'm a people pleaser. I try to do, the best I can at everything I do. And and just because we do want the projects, but at the end of the day, it's well, if it happens, it happens, and if not, you know, oh well, on to the
Yeah,
next
and there's
one.
no point crying over spilled milk or losing sleep over it because you got to go find another customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's some great advice. I love your strategic breakdown to get to your estimates. It's got to make the process a little bit faster too, because you're not constantly re-inputting data or writing it out in your truck every day.
Yeah, the only thing that I do research every bid, unless it's just like within the same week, is material prices. Just because they do change, then they don't change that often, but it's so few and far between. Like there's jobs that will use 4-inch corrugated pipe or something like that, and then it'll be 2-3 months later before we'll ever use that material again.
Right.
Um, but that's the only thing outside of rock. I mean, rock is pretty steady, from spring to spring. And they're really good about sending out reminders,
I was just
price
going to say they
increases and
usually
stuff like
mail
that.
out if you're a contractor, there's a price increase in advance. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, that it definitely speeds the process up putting bids together for sure.
and at the end of the day, right, we got in this, you're getting in this business to push dirt, not paperwork. So anything you can do to speed up that process.
Absolutely. Yeah. It yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've never met a small business excavation company owner that said, I woke up one day and said, God, I can't wait to sit behind a computer for 4 hours every night after I work my ass to the bone for 12, 14 hours in the field. Never once.
Yeah, yeah, that's always been a fun time. It's like if I could reverse it, if I could do the computer work in the morning and up until like 2 o'clock, and then go do the physical work until 1 o'clock in the morning, that would be a little bit different. But a lot of people don't want beepers and stuff, backup alarms going off at 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah, they can't talk during the dinner table because you're too busy beeping in the backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, after it's almost like after 2 o'clock, my brain's like, all right, I'm done for the day. You can take over physical. You can take over muscles.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. I'm much more creative and much more focused early in the morning than I am mid to late day.
Yeah.
And like an idiot, I schedule my day going to the gym first thing in the morning instead of my desk, where I should be going to the gym at 2 in the afternoon when I got that brain fog. But I'm afraid that I'll work and then I'll work through it and then I'll quit going to the gym. So
Yeah, I always did better doing well, whenever I did work out steadily. I always did better with it in the evenings.
did you?
Yeah.
So like when I had a job like at an actual building and facility and we had kind of like a start stop time, I could easily do it in the afternoons, like get off work, go to the gym, then head home. But I had that routine.
Hmm.
Like, like with us, like I'm assuming your home office is at your house.
Correct.
right? So like until you go to a job site, you have no reason to leave your home. And I'm the same way. Like I'm home based. Like we've got this studio and an office built in the house. So I'm not out there doing something already to go, oh, I can associate doing the gym or whatever with something else I'm already doing. So like I've got to create this habit from scratch.
Yeah, that's been something that's kind of been a challenge for me. Whenever you're working for somebody else, you're absolutely right. It's a schedule, and you get into a routine, and it's easy to maintain just because you're working for somebody else. But when you go out on your own, especially whenever there's you're by yourself, no employees, uh, it's hard to maintain a. It takes some discipline to be able to build your own schedule and stick to it, for sure.
It does. And you know what else I find? And it's taken years to realize this, but I also don't have the accountability of anybody asking me what I'm working on. And I'll find that like there's days that I'll spend 2 or 3, maybe even 4 hours on a project that is actually irrelevant for the work that I needed to get done that day or that week.
Right. Uh, that may be a little bit of an ADHD symptom.
Oh, 1,000%, man. 1,000%.
I do it all the time.
Yeah. If something interests me, I will go down the rabbit hole, and I don't become like an expert on it, but I become substantially more intelligent on that topic than the average human because I invest that time to learn it.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. I'm the
Yeah.
exact same way.
Like I went through a phase where I love football and I love college football too. So I just go through this phase that I would watch it, and then I would like during the draft process, I'd read this and I'd do all that. So we'd be out watching football games, and like my fiance would be like, what college did he go to? And I'd rattle it off. And like, what round in the draft was he drafted? I'm like, I'd rattle it off. And everyone's like, how in the God's green earth do you know that? And I'm like, because I enjoyed it. That's why.
Right.
You
Oh yeah,
know?
you definitely throw yourself into stuff that you're more interested, that you are interested in, opposed to stuff that you don't care about. Not necessarily care about. It's got to be done, but if it's not something that interests you, it's very very hard to get it taken care of.
Yeah. And then like the problems, like let's say you built your own website and you're setting up your own Google business profile and all that. And like that's way out of the realm of anything that you do on a daily basis. Like you've got to really focus and do that. And I find that when I'm doing tasks like that, that whether it's a one-off or something I've never done before, I look at it more like a puzzle, and I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm not putting this puzzle together. Like, it doesn't matter what the pieces are, the lingo. Like, I'll be damned if I'm not putting this puzzle together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's something that like I love bidding jobs. I think it's just as fun as running equipment. Um, at first it was kind of a pain just because yeah, I was unfamiliar with it, but once I started kind of getting an understanding of it, and now that we've got our Excel sheet, it's I can zip right through them, but it's fun for me. I actually like doing them.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I think that's what happens when you devote the time to build a process.
yeah, yeah, I believe so. And then for stuff that I'm not too sure about that I know is not too important, delegation is great. A lot of times it's
Amen,
a whole lot
man.
easier to pay. Go ahead and just pay the premium up front to go ahead and get somebody to do it and get it taken care of and get it behind you than it is to waste all the other time trying to figure it out. And where it may take you a month, somebody else can have it done in a couple of days.
Yeah, speed to market. It wins every time.
Yeah.
And I always like it's kind of a dickhead comment to say, but like other excavation company owners, they complain and gripe about a customer because the guy says he's going to rent equipment and do it himself. He doesn't want to pay that price that quote was. And they kind of badmouth. They're like, well, this guy's never done this type of work. How's he going to put the drain in or the swale or, and they kind of knock the customer for trying to do it on their own. And I'm like, yeah, you call me once a week because you can't figure out how to build your website. Like, go hire somebody to build your damn website. It's not what you
Mhm.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. That's one of the things that's been a major help within this past year. We've hired an outside CFO to kind of help out with just, deciding where money should go and where we should put it and stuff like that. And from that, we've gotten connected with with an SEO company, uh, who's, who's going to do a quite long list of things. And it's not, going to cost us a whole lot right out front, because I mean, that's not necessarily something that we have a budget for right now. But, um, you know, working out deals, percentage deals and stuff is a great thing. It doesn't always have to be a upfront cost.
Right.
And a lot of people are like, well, that's a lot of money up front. I'm like, well, just talk to them. You never know. You never know when somebody's like, well, we don't have to do that. We can go a different route.
What's the worst thing they do? They say no, and you're in the exact same situation you're in right now. But if you don't ask, you never know what the other outcome could be.
Yep. What's that? What's that saying? The answer to an unasked question is always no.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah. My buddy's looking at a house and he's like, this guy bought the house 2 years ago and now he's wanting 100 grand more and he hasn't done any work to it and he's got it for sale. He's like, I love the house, but I'm not paying that price. And I was like, nobody's going to pay that price. I said, go knock on his door and say, hey, when your contract with your realtor runs out and the house still isn't sold, I'll give you this price, no realtor fee. You save the money. He's like, well, he probably won't go for that. And I'm like, well, he's definitely not going to go for it if you don't go knock on his door. I'm like,
yeah, absolutely.
What's the worst he says? No, it's exactly where you're at today.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what, going back to our bids and our estimates and stuff. I always, whenever I email it to them, I always put a message in there like, look, call me so we can review this. Call me so we can review the bid together over the phone. That way, if there's any concerns, questions, or anything like that, we can go over it and we can, I can give you a reason on why if you did something you don't understand, or, if you want to modify the scope of work, to try to reduce the price or add stuff on. And it's wild to me that so few people will even give you a call back. And I'm like,
Right.
man, that's yeah, that's the reason we put that in there. And even with that, we still get so few calls back sometimes.
But you know what they will do, Luke? And this is what I'm a firm believer in. They will take your phone call before you give them the estimate because they want that estimate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So right. So it's kind of like, hey, are you available right now? Are you at home? No, I'm not going to be home for another 2 hours. Great. What time's a good time to call you? And then you send them the email while you're on the phone with them. So that way you've got them on the phone when they open it.
That's a good idea. I'll probably start implementing that.
Mm-hmm. Just because it's anything, I think we can keep doing it the same way and getting frustrated at the same result, or we can start looking for like maybe that doesn't work for you, right? But you'll never know if you don't try it.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And then I hear these guys talk about they send the estimates like, yeah, but nobody ever calls back. I'm like, well, how many times do you call them? Once.
Yeah.
And I show them the statistical number that's like, listen, the number of closed deals after an estimate's been provided based down by percentages. And these are off the top of my head. They're not in stone. Don't hold me to them, but it's like less than 20% on the first phone call back that say yes to the estimate.
Right.
But it's still like 18% on the fifth phone call.
Yeah.
Like put a process that says I'm calling everybody a minimum of 5 times, like over a span of 10 days.
Yeah. Which, yeah. And I get I'll do a couple phone calls, I guess, but I guess some of that is, just like, well, they're definitely not interested or something, and then not every situation. And we've had plenty of customers that, oh yeah, hey, sorry, we've been waiting on, another couple of estimates or something like that. And, it's not always necessarily the case. Like, oh, that son of a gun's way too high. We're never calling him back again. But
Yeah,
it's we're waiting on, or well, the bank called us and we've got to get this turned in. So we're not even approved for the loan yet, or whatever this case may be. Um, but yeah, and it's just some of it. I'm like, well, it could be worth it, I guess.
Well,
certain
I mean,
situations.
I think it's worth it personally because I've seen the data of companies that implement that 4 or 5 phone call strategy. Like
Yeah.
our friend owned a pressure washing business, and they were struggling. They're getting by. Like we didn't change any advertise. We didn't do anything. I just simply said we're going to call every customer 5 times. And at the end of like a 45-day period, their revenues were up almost 35%. The only thing
Hmm.
they did was implement more phone calls in the office to the existing bids that were out. And she told me, she's like, I can't believe how many people go, I'm so glad you called. I've been meaning to call you, but I've been slammed at work. My mom got sick. The kids started baseball. Like life happens and you are
Hmm.
not their priority.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you never know what somebody's situation is. Like you can think up a lot of things in your own head, like on circumstances on why they're not calling you back. You know, like, oh, well, they didn't like us at all, or something like that, and it's not even nowhere near the situation whatsoever.
Right. And then the other side of that coin is they answer on the third call and go, man, you call a lot. No, I don't need your services. Thank you very much for the estimate, though. Guess what?
Right.
You don't have to wonder anymore. It's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. There's a value in not wondering about that and creating that narrative like, how did I mess this up? Or because we do
Yeah.
that self sabotage, terrible.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So get on the phones, call those damn estimates or automate it. Right. Man, you could automate emails and text messages with today's technology.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something I struggle with is emails and texting. I just assume, I guess just because it's so much faster just to make a phone call and get a quick answer real quick. And
But
for
nobody
me,
answers anymore. It's so hard.
I know nobody answers anymore, but for me, it's such a pain in the butt to because I a lot of times if I especially if I'm in a piece of equipment, I'm using both my hands, and so I got to stop a machine, let it sit there and run, idle, burn fuel,
Yeah.
and and I'm not getting any kind of production done. If make a phone call real quick with my earbuds in, and if it starts getting into a serious conversation, I can always just shut the machine down. But whenever you go for 5 minutes, stop, return a text, go for 5 minutes, stop, return a text, like it just kills production. It's a
It's
lot easier to be
terrible.
able to stop the machine, get
And
your
so much gets
conversation
lost
taken
in
care of.
translation. You can't get all the details. Like you just won't do it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that I want to try to figure out too. Is I need to download an app or something to do record phone calls. That way I can remember. That way I can remember like scope of work and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you have to be careful of that because there's state laws that vary from state to state about recording phone calls without the other party being aware of it.
Which in Tennessee, it's not illegal, but I mean, I would tell everybody like, hey, this phone calls are being recorded mainly just for purpose, scope of work purposes. That
Yeah,
way I can go back and that way I don't forget anything. But on the other hand, too, it would be very handy if you ever had to go to court,
thousand
God
percent.
forbid, for some reason.
So for guys that talk about this, that's like it's on their radar. I always recommend. Are you running your business off of a cell phone number, a dedicated line? Like, how are you set up currently with your phones?
Yeah, so we have a dedicated phone, cell phone for our business, and then I have my own personal line. My wife has her own personal line.
Okay. So as companies grow, especially this smaller size where you're at, where it's like you and your wife that are managing most of that, I always tell everybody, I'm like, hey, go find like a VoIP, which is voice over IP, or that runs off of a voice private network. It's like Vonage. If you've ever seen ads for like Vonage or Ring Central, and there's 15 other companies out there that are like it, but it's an internet based phone system.
Hmm.
Right. So it's similar to like a cellular, but it's running off the internet. What happens though is you're able to download an app on your phone.
Hmm.
So now you can answer and make calls from the app on your phone. Well, guess what? If you have 5 people that you want to be able to answer phones, all they have to do is download that app and log in. And then you can set up a call tree of like, it only rings to me for the first 10 seconds, then it'll ring to the other four, whatever you want it to do.
Hmm.
You can set up call recording. You can set up voicemail boxes. But again, like especially, let's say you end up hiring a part-time office manager that works 3 days a week to help you with some of the billing and all that. Well, guess what? When she's working in those office, whether it's at her house or whatever else, she has that app on her computer or her phone, and she can now take your pre-qualifying questions, qualify customers, and send you an email or a text message with all the notes. And at the end of your production, you can take care of all that work and all those customers.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's something we'll have to look into for sure.
Yeah. So like we set up our entire company from day one on a VPN phone system because like nobody else works with me in my office. So we're all remote.
Yeah.
So like when you answer when you call Skid Steer Nation, God knows where the person is that answers the call.
Right. Which,
And
and that's
we
some,
can transfer them back and forth in the whole 9 yards.
yeah. Which I mean, it would still be very handy because, like I said, our outside CFO, a lot of the stuff is third party, being handled elsewhere. Um, but we're also trying to, kind of expand and get into more jobs that line up with what my experience is in the past.
Yep.
Just because it is kind of a headache, and it definitely puts a strain on things whenever a customer that's not used to this line of work or terminology that I may think is common knowledge. That's another issue that I have. I think it's common knowledge just because I've done it for so long, and
Yeah.
and my wife, she'll get me all the time. She's like, "What is that? What does that mean?" She's like, "I don't know what any of that you just said means." And I'm just rattling off lingo and terms and stuff from 20 years of excavation work, and
Yep.
she's like, "Yeah, I have no idea what any of that is."
Yeah.
And
You
so
look at it like, what's wrong with you? How do you not know that? Right.
right, yeah, exactly. And so um, that's I think that's probably one of my biggest issues as far as like with customer relations is just because I know the work, and I've been used to working on jobs for so long that there are no questions asked just because it's all common knowledge. Whereas whenever you're going to work for an individual who's this is their first time, taking on getting a job done that at this amount, and a lot of it is, at the once their house is built or whatever their shop pad or their shop or whatever is built, it's just the ground to them. But there's so much more that goes into it, and a lot of people don't account for the site prep before you even start building a structure.
Right.
And so once we get started, and I try to be very thorough on our scope of work whenever we write it when we write it out. And one thing that I've actually kind of forgotten to request this from customers, but is getting them to send me a scope of work for what they're wanting completed in writing. That way I can base it off of their words and not what
Yeah.
we discussed. And so that's definitely been beneficial in the past. And like I said, I've actually kind of forgotten about it these past few bids I put in, but now that we've talked about it, it'll be fresh in my mind.
Fresh on your mind. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much technology out there. And I think that's the part that's so overwhelming is like a small business owner that's focused on excavation work. Where do you even go look to find the right tools to help you manage your business? And where do you have the time to go find all those tools?
Which like what kind of tools do you mean?
Well, I'm just you're talking about screen recordings and you're talking about video,
Oh
like
yeah.
recording phone calls. And then I'm like, well, God, they probably make cameras like that too. So you could record your walk around and then transcribe the notes. Like there's so many things out there that could help you like that. So we quit beating our heads on the wall. Like the solution probably exists to the problem in today's technology world. You don't know what you don't know, and you have no clue what to look for.
Absolutely. It's been a very common phrase between me and my wife since we started. You don't know what you don't know. And where by the time you learn it, it's probably already too late and you're probably fixing to have to pay a bill because of it.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I get told all the time, like they're like, why don't you just Google that? And I'm like, I did not even know that existed. It didn't even cross my mind that was an option.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Like the world's growing so rapidly fast technologically that I had no clue that I could even look for a solution that could do those things.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny because like the world's changing so much. My friend, he's the COO of a manufacturing company. They make like material handling carts for data centers and all that. But they're like, we were out after work last night, and him and a couple of his employees, they were all talking about, hey, do you have the Copilot built into your Excel? Like it's Copilot is Chat GPT made by Microsoft. And now they're talking about like I want to get it incorporated in my email so it can auto folder filed emails so I don't have to look at 300 a day. I can just go to the folders. And I'm like, these guys 24 months ago would have laughed at the idea of using anything AI to help them assist their business. And here they are geeking out over it, having beers after work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a time saver, and there's probably a lot that we could utilize from like Chat GPT and Copilot and stuff like that. But man, just finding the time to be able to do that, because if we're not on the job, if I'm not on the job, it's either trying to get stuff straightened out for our new website or gather information for just whatever the case may be, whether it's another job coming up to build an estimate, or like I said, for our new SEO company, or uh, getting stuff together for our contractor's license. And we've talked about getting a VA, a virtual assistant, also to be able to handle some of this stuff. But us being so new, and I do tend to be a little picky, which I've gotten better. I've kind of stepped away from that. I was like, look, here's the basic idea, just make it happen, and then we can tweak it from there.
Yeah,
But
and I'll tell you what, when you get into the virtual assistants, you need to have a structured process that they can follow in place because they're afraid to make a mistake, so they're not. I find that they're not as free thinking.
yeah, it's still a lot of hand holding, I guess, at the beginning stages until you get them.
Oh, not much hand holding. If you have a process laid out, like if you say, hey, at
Yeah,
8:05, check these emails. Anything with these names go in this folder. Anything with this gets me sent a text message to me. These get undeleted. And you've got all that written out, and then you've got the whole process. It's like it's plug and play. They will run with it.
yeah. But even getting those processes wrote down out of your head onto paper, man, it takes so
Right.
much time.
Right. But it's a one
That's what
and
I'm
done
doing.
though, Luke. Like
Yeah,
that's the
it absolutely is, and it's
and
worth
that's
it
the
in the long
mindset you got
run.
to take on. Like, is it worth 4 hours to do it right? So I never have to do it again.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Just wish there were like a few more hours in the day,
Yeah.
or, or another few days in the week or something.
Another few days. We'd
A,
find a
a
way to
second
fill
weekend.
we'd find a way to fill that shit with stuff too that was more important than processes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's something that which I mean, you can only do what you can do as far as whether it's financially, time span, whatever. But somebody and I just thought about this morning. Somebody asked on a Facebook group that I'm on about something. I was like, well, what you do is you hire an outside process manager, get you a process going, and take their process, adopt it, and then once you get to where you feel comfortable enough with it, after you've learned it from then that's when you rehire somebody to take it over that you can explain to them, and then they can take over that whole situation. And and there's a lot of times it's easy to figure out a solution for somebody else, but whenever it's right in front of your face, it's it seems like it's so much bigger and you don't even see it, but you can give
It
somebody else the same exact advice.
can't see the forest through the trees, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that the process is like for like we tend as and this isn't just excavation, but it's like across the world. Our problems are different. They don't know what
Hmm.
it's like running an excavation company. It's not the same as being a general contractor or a plumber. Yeah, it is. You need people to call you. You need customers that
Hmm.
have a problem. You need to provide a solution and they need to pay you. It's literally the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So go find the process because like it's hard. Excavation companies don't talk to excavation companies. Like they don't want to give their trade secrets away. But if you ran into a plumber and the plumber was rocking and rolling, he's like, man, I incorporated this. I've got this going on here. The framework is identical to what you need. You just got to tweak the small components inside the ladder, change the rungs of the ladder a little bit to fit your need. But like you can go find the framework to run your business in any service-based industry, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does translate across the board. There it's like you said, you need a customer with a problem, you got a solution, and they gotta be willing to pay you.
Yeah, we took a process that I watched a guy do, and he's like an online guru thing, and he wanted all these leads. So he had a virtual assistant sending 50 messages a day on Facebook, trying to generate interest to book a call with him so he could sell him whatever he was selling him.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at that process and I was like, that I could care less about getting sales calls to sell something, but I like the structure he has here.
Right.
So we just flipped it, right? Like we took the exact same process he was using and said, hey, what if we sent 50 messages a day to excavation business owners and invited them to join the Skid Steer Nation Facebook private group?
Yeah.
Right. It's like you can find inspiration for whatever problem you have anywhere, like in way outside your normal looking range. You just have to have to look and go, oh, I like the way those dots connect. How can I make my dots for my problem work that similar pathway?
Yeah. Yeah. And what seemed to work best for us is, and ask people who are in a better situation or a higher situation than what you are, who've already been through your situation. Just ask. Hey, you got a system for this aspect of the job. I mean, because like those that's where direct like where the same field really comes into play. I feel like like okay, like 'cause I don't know, like the size company that we are at this stage is not like where we want to be at. We want to be like, one of my 5-year goals when we first started was to be able to compete with one of the last companies that I worked for. They're building 80 to 100 lot subdivisions. Um, and so like I had a lot of knowledge on the way that they had a lot of their like timesheets and tracking hours and documentation and stuff from them. But like cost codes, like there's I just wonder how many companies that are similar to the same size as us have cost codes and know what the reasoning for having them and stuff. And like we finally figured out, oh, that's where a cost code would come in handy, because at first it was like, I know we had to have cost codes for a reason, so
Right.
we kind of adopted theirs, but like I didn't really know exactly why. But as we've grown and learned and gained more knowledge, like, oh, okay, this is why. I understand now. And but I'm thankful for working for the bigger companies, but I think it's set up I think it kind of did give me like a little bit bigger expectation for the stage that we're at this point too, though.
Yeah.
Which is it's kind of a letdown, but I mean, it's the stage that we're at is definitely necessary for our growth, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like you talked about tracking time code, your timesheets and all that for different employees, and like looking at those processes. That's no different than like an HVAC company with 15 technicians. Like they have to have a way of billing that and tracking that, and their framework for that is easily duplicated to excavation. So again, like we can go find people that have already solved that problem. It doesn't have to be because they do dirt work like us to implement those solutions. I mean, you find a guy that's doing $15 million a year in HVAC, he has some damn good processes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's one of the podcasts that we've listened to since pretty much the beginning. They always talk about systemizing your processes. Where it's just it's just that's just how we do things. It's not, there's no, well, if you did it this way, blah blah blah. No, because it's part of a system. There's a reason
Right.
why things are done the way they are.
Well, and like it's funny because people fight that, right? Like they don't want to be told what to do. But then you look at franchises. Like you're literally paying $250,000, $500,000, whatever the number is, for the systems. How to answer the phone, what to wear, the training of the employees, the making of the sandwich or the fixing of the iPhone. Like that's what you're buying is all of the processes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which I don't necessarily eat it, but like McDonald's, they're known. That's one of the things that they're known for. Their processes. They have things down to a science.
Yeah.
To a T, and they're where they're at for a reason. And it works.
Yeah. Like the big aha book for me on figuring out how to run a business more efficiently is called The E Myth, and it's by Michael Gerber. And he basically does a really good job of storytelling through the eyes of one of his clients that owns a bakery, I believe it was. And like he teaches basically systemizing your business and following the franchise systems. And he goes over
Yeah,
the common problems they have, right? Like we get so busy, business is coming in, we can't handle this. We hire our first employee and they say, "Hey, I can help with the books." And you're like, "Awesome, you can take that." And then they say, "Hey, I can take the phone calls." And what you end up doing is you end up creating a person that you give all the jobs to that you just don't want to do anymore.
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
they don't have like a division, they don't have a role, they don't have anything they can bite their teeth into. They're just doing the same chaotic movements you were doing. And you feel
Yeah,
better because you got a guy. But the guy's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing because that's 8 different things.
right.
And then when the
Yeah, and
system
that's
gets behind and the numbers fall backwards, like the owner's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "What do you mean? It's your business." And then that fight happens between the two. And
yeah, yeah, and we've kind of experienced a little bit of that early on. We had a partner early on, and um, up front, we felt like we were all on the same page and had the same direction and stuff. But it got to where we got in the I got into the cycle of going to the job, 7 o'clock in the morning, all the way up until 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. Once I got home, I'd have to start doing bids and stuff. And it was me and him both on the job. But once I got home, then it was time to start doing estimates. And start putting those together. And during that time, I didn't have my Excel spreadsheet, and it was a man, it was a pain. For a little single, driveway and house pad, you know, with no great detail, it would still take me quite a while just to be able to get everything done. And then, before I knew it, because it'd take me twice as long also because I was spent for the day. So by the time I knew it, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, well, I gotta go to bed.
yeah,
And it got to the point where we were like, all right, we've got to have some help because I can't continue on like this I absolutely can't continue on like this. And so we tried finding just a part-time laborer, and we could never find anybody that'd be consistent. They'd be there for one day, or they'd show up at like half a day or something. The majority of the work was already done. And I was like, well, why don't we hire an operator, because we operate daily. Why don't we hire an operator? Let me do the bids, you do all the labor work and stuff that we're needing help on. Find an operator that can operate, that we know we've got daily work for, and you as an owner take it over, and to do all the grunt stuff. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot. A lot of times it was just holding a shovel, spotting or something like that. A little shovel in here and there, but nothing major. And I was like, then that would also give you time to kind of step back and see what all is actually really going on. And we never really actually saw eye to eye, and we separated. But it was probably all for the best.
yeah.
But
I love your thought process on that. In fact, a different client who we have with Groundbreaking Growth was struggling with the same thing, couldn't find a good laborer.
mhm.
So and your advice is amazing because I was like, why don't you hire an operator? You become the ground guy. I'm like, what happens when the phone rings and a customer interrupts you, or like you need to do this? Like he's like, well, I got to stop the machine. And I'm like, and what's that mean the laborer's doing? He's like, well, he ain't doing nothing because I'm not doing anything. I'm like, so you
Absolutely, yeah.
shut
So just
down the
kind of,
entire operation.
yeah,
I'm like, you
yeah,
shut down
absolutely,
nothing as a laborer, taking phone calls and answering text messages as the owner.
yeah, absolutely. And that, and it's scary. It's scary starting a business, and we were still we were in our first year. It split our first year and our first half of the second year, and it was kind of scary because we were looking at starting to get bigger jobs, um, and I don't know. I don't know if there was a fear that set in or what. And but yeah, that chapter ended. It's been a and then and then that's a whole nother issue that a lot of people don't really think about once they start a business. And especially when they want to scale is your hiring process and what you're looking for as far as employees. And it's not like just throwing a number out there and saying I'll pay somebody this much to come do this job. Well, then when they get there, they can do the job, but you don't have your stuff together enough to be able to provide them with some security just because you've been doing everything, and every little aspect of the business is getting just a little bit of attention, but not the whole attention that it always needs.
Amen. Yeah,
So that's been a
you have to have the culture of your business defined, the values of your
yeah,
business, like who you are as a company, why you're doing what you're doing. You have to make those non-negotiable. And then you have to develop a hiring process that is hiring for cultural fit.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's
Because
that's been our goal 100% from the very beginning when we started discussing hiring.
there's
Um,
nothing you do in the field you can't teach somebody.
exactly, absolutely. But having the mindset of doing things a certain way and seeing the reasoning behind it is completely different.
You can't
You know,
teach
you could
that.
be the no, you could be the best operator in the world, but if you're set in one way of doing something because it's the way it's always been done, that's that's not what we're looking for. We want to be able to grow, to be able to provide a positive work environment and a place where employees aren't just like, okay, well, we're working 70 hours this week, 10 hours Monday through Friday, 8 on Saturdays. People want time now. And that's something that we're working on, but it's not really I've never worked in the Middle Tennessee area. I've never worked for a company that's been production based to where it's hey, y'all got this done in this amount of time. All right, well, we're on schedule. We're only going to work 40 hours. That way you can have home time at home with your wife and kids, or heck, if you're single, you can go out and hang out with your friends, do whatever the heck it is you want to do.
Yeah.
That way people can have a better quality of life. And
Yeah.
that's
I've
something
just
that we
seen
want to
so
be able
many
to provide.
guys like they want to hire an operator, and then you're like, we found this guy. He's awesome, man. He's got 20 years experience. He's probably the best in the county that can do it. And my first question is, what's his job history and what's the longest he's ever worked at a single company?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, 3 years. He's been at like 7 companies. And I'm like, he's toxic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Like
because you
he's not going
definitely
to get
go.
out of the cab. He's going to blame everybody else. Like he's better than you,
Mm-hmm.
even though you're like, he's toxic.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, and that matters, we're gonna have struggles with it for sure. But I believe wholeheartedly if you take care of your employees, your company is going to be taken care of with minimal stress once you get up to that point. But getting to that point, that's a whole different story.
It is. And like I just had a contractor come over to our house the other day. Tracy's looking at doing some like board and batten designs on a couple different walls in the house. And I told her I'm zero interest in doing that. And we started talking. Like he was a fireman for 7 years, left a couple years ago. He's starting to grow this business. He's starting to get some employees. And he's like, yeah, I really just got to figure out how to way to like help them, like make them feel secure that we're the right company for them to stay with. Cause I don't want to keep turning them over.
Right.
And like we talked about like 401ks and, retirement plans. It's like, yeah, we're just not at a point we can do that yet. And I said, that's a false.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah,
said,
that's
there's
something
nothing
that
about a 401k that says the company has to match.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we're actually wanting to implement for whenever we do start hiring is not necessarily a 401k, but I've got a business coach that I'll talk to here and there, and he's actually to me he seems like a financial genius. but we've started talking with him about providing as a benefit a financial financial education as a benefit to be
I,
able to help employees make money for them instead of just your traditional 401k, IRA, pension,
yeah.
stuff like that, because there's so many more ways than what today's society is pushing towards people, and that they could benefit them so much more. Only reason they don't push them is because the banks don't make money.
Right. And like, that's exactly, you and I are lockstep in thought process and values and like what we can do. It's kind of shocking to me, actually, in a good way, in a good way. But I told him that I said, bring in a financial advisor to explain to them compounding interest, what IRAs are, and what a set, like, it's all foreign to them and they're afraid of it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So start educating them and then said, bring a guy in on, you name the topic, whether it's a supplier on new tools or hardware, and like have a luncheon. Just invest in their education, not just for work, but for life. Make them
yeah,
better
absolutely.
human being, and they will walk through a wall for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I've always said, and like, which we haven't found them yet, but I've always said, if you create an environment to where you give them the ability to go out and do it on their own, but they but treat them good enough to where they don't want to. And I feel like we can do that, and I feel like a lot of other companies can do that too. They just don't want to.
I feel like every company can do it. It just needs to be a priority.
Yeah,
It needs
and
to
that
be a
and that's
value of the company.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we did start our own company. We were kind of, well, like I said before, we were pushed into starting our own business. It's not like it was a planned thing, but after once we did, that was one of the most important things, just because nowadays, and this isn't just from the last 4 years. This is before too. It just seemed in the excavation world, especially in Middle Tennessee, like pay pay rates were always way, way behind compared to other areas of the world. Um, but but it can be done very easily. You obviously you pass it along, but you can adjust that from your profit margins, markups, and stuff like that, depending on where you can still make money. It may not be just massive amounts, but it will you still make money as a business, and you can also give your employees a quality of life. And then you throw financial education in on top of that, to where they can actually understand how money people can understand how money works, instead of just that being the prize, whether
Right.
instead of it being a tool. I think that will definitely help our situation whenever we do get to that stage.
1,000%. And and if you start treating them that way and educating them and making them more confident in their own personal life and better humans, and you make them a part of your process of like they have a voice at work, just because they have an idea doesn't mean you have to do it, but you have to hear it.
Yeah,
Right. Like I've watched companies that implemented very similar strategies to their growing teams, and they exploded from 4, 5, 6 employees to 2024, and they never posted a job posting.
yeah,
And what you find is there's always somebody really good that's a good person that works on a crew that with a shitty owner or shitty coworkers. And when
yeah,
they hear about your team and all the benefits and how much fun they have at work and like he's the best, they will call you and ask you and say, "Hey, I want to work for you."
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, my old whenever I was a foreman for a company out of Hendersonville. Um, my traco operator, that's what me and him talked about all the time. This was I hadn't even thought of owning my own business or start my own business at this time. It was my goal was to be able to step up to a superintendent, and just to be able to grow my knowledge. It's never really been a goal to own my own business. Um, but that's what we've always said. It's like, if there's a company that actually come out and they gave, even if it was, so like going rate at that time was like $25 an hour, I think, for like a top tier operator. But there's if they started somebody out at $32 an hour, just the hourly wage, that would help out tremendously as far as the caliber of employees that you would get just because just from the rate alone. But and I believe that 100%, but I don't think that's everything. It's definitely not everything.
This is something you and I are going to disagree on because I think wage is the least important. I mean, it's important, don't get me wrong, but it's the least important as far as quality of people that you get to work for you.
No, that's so I'm saying the same thing. Like it doesn't matter. That wage alone doesn't determine that you're going to just have phenomenal employees.
Right.
No, wage doesn't determine how good the employee is actually going to be, but you at least have the option of the best of the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a study out there. It talks about the work increase after giving an employee a raise. Do you know how long their productivity increases after they get a raise?
Well, like the first month.
7 to 10 days.
I didn't figure it'd be too long.
And then it goes right back to where it was before. And now they just feel that they deserve it. They didn't earn it.
Yeah.
Like money's the last motivator you should be using for your team.
Yeah, and I think that's where the mindset of people viewing money as a prize instead of a tool in life, I think that's where that kind of comes into play also.
Yep.
Yeah,
because if you give them the money now, they don't need you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I'm making this. I don't have to do everything I was doing before him. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
It definitely makes sense. But that's why we hope to be able to provide an environment to where they know they're going to get taken care of outside of money, their personal time off. Like most companies I work for, even as a foreman superintendent, you get a couple weeks of paid vacation. But as far as like paid time off or sick days and stuff like that, that's kind of unheard of in our area. And that's something that we want to be able to provide, and it's very easily implemented. You just got to be able to work it into your budget.
It's very easy to implement. And if that's not on your radar currently, allowing your team members to have a voice and be a part of the team, and you give them a little bit of freedom to make some decisions on their own, right, wrong, or indifferent, as long as they got a thought process, let them develop the confidence in who they are and what they do for you, your productivity will increase.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Like I said, everything can be fixed, but like if you're just sitting there with a fine tooth comb micromanaging everything that everybody does, that's where issues come in and people get aggravated and like, you know what, forget this. I'll just coast by and, because they're going to come back and fix it behind me anyways.
Right. Why give it my best effort? It won't be good enough anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny. I always say this to every business owner I talk to. I'm like, one of the deciding factors, tell me if I'm wrong. One of the deciding factors of you starting your own business is that you hated being micromanaged.
Yeah.
You're smarter than that. Like, I know how to do the job. If they would just give me the opportunity to make the decisions, like for the work I needed to do.
Yeah.
Why in God's green earth would you become the micromanager?
Yeah. Especially in our industry, it's just dirt. We've moved it once. We can adjust it.
Move it again.
Yeah, which that's typically try not to do that. But one person, allowing them to try to gain some experience and knowledge, because it usually starts out small, anyways. Just hey, go over there and jump on the Mini X and do this, and just let them see what they can do. And a lot of times, I'll especially if it's somebody new that's coming in to help us, hey, I need you to take care of this, and then I'll go away just because people are always nervous first time they're doing things. I'll go completely out of sight. That way they're not thinking I'm just sitting there dwelling and looking over their shoulder and make sure they're not screwing something up.
Remove that one element for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been proven to help. Some people just some people shouldn't have some people shouldn't be given free range on stuff like that. But you can kind of make that judgment beforehand. I mean,
That's why you just got to set the parameters in advance, right? Like give them
mhm.
whether they've got 3 inches left and right, or 3 feet, or 3 miles. Set the parameters.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
our team internally, if there's a tool to help you do your job and it's less than $100,
Hmm.
you do not need my permission to get it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Why would I create the bottleneck of them having to stop or then build up the courage? Or like, if this tool helps you do your job, and and then as we grow as a company and they grow up the ladder, that number gets bigger.
Right.
Right? Like your
Yeah.
right hand should have a larger freedom budget of things that you can spend money on than the labor at the bottom.
Yeah.
But that
Absolutely.
labor is like, hey man, if it's $25 and you need that, go ahead and get it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Like, we have to stop being the bottleneck in our business.
Yeah. Yeah. We hope to be able to get to that phase here soon.
Right. But I mean, it's just something that as we grow, you have to be cognitive of, like, how many steps of a process am I touching, and how many do I really need to touch?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You at the early stages, yeah, it's kind of necessary. But as you grow, I mean, that's the point of growing, is to be able to get away from certain things, to be able to let somebody else handle them.
Yeah.
That's what the trade off of an hourly wage is, or a salary. A salary is, hey, I need somebody to do this.
Right.
I'll make a deal with you. And that's all
And
it is.
yeah, and I really think when you start grabbing that mindset that I'm going to hire or outsource, whatever the option is you choose, to fill in the gaps, when you start developing that and you start believing it, amazing things happen. Because this is where I think the school system really fails us. Like, you're not good at math,
Yeah.
work harder. You're not good at English, work harder, work harder,
Yeah.
work harder. They never once said, wow, you're really good at art, you should be in 3 art classes. How good could you be
Yeah.
if we double down on it?
Yeah. Yeah. I have the same mindset and the same
But
thought process on that.
as a business owner, if you can grab that mindset of, I'm going to double down on what I'm really good at, and
Yeah.
I'm going to outsource or hire everything else,
Hmm.
how much more
Yeah.
productive
Absolutely.
could your business be?
And and that's what overhead's for. you know,
It's just a number.
right?
Build it in. Just a
Yeah.
number.
Uh, but which obviously just depends on your capabilities as well. But within reason, yeah, there's no issue. If it's a problem that you're facing on a regular basis, then it's necessary.
Yep.
And so yeah, either you're gonna have to find a way to get it done yourself, or is it cheaper than and that's another thing too that I don't think a lot of people realize is coming up with what is your hourly wage as an owner of a business. And when you figure that out, then you look at all the different other things that are in front of you and be like, okay, well, how much does it cost me? I'm worth this. How much does it cost to have this done, either outsourced or hire somebody to do it, versus me taking my time at this rate doing it? If you can pay somebody $20 an hour to take care of that, why would you do it whenever your time is worth $1,500 an hour? And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
I agree with you 100%, Luke. I mean, the first thing I tell business owners to do is to just keep a notebook with you and track everything you do every day for 1 week. It seems tedious, but you can do it for 5 days. And
Yeah.
then you can categorize all those tasks and go, my God, look at all the tasks I do and how many hours I spend doing $12 an hour work.
Hmm. Yeah. 100%. Like it adds up a lot. It adds up to those little bitty tasks a lot more than what you actually think it does. And it's yeah, you could absolutely hire somebody to do it, whether
And
it's
once,
in house or out or
yeah.
outside.
But I feel like you need to do that exercise of time tracking in order to change the mindset of, I can't afford it, to, holy shit, I can't afford not to.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Because we
Uh,
can easily talk ourselves out of spending money
oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Which I
until
don't
it
know.
come till it comes to the new
Me,
truck. Then
I'm my wife, she has to talk me out of spending money a lot of times, but sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes it's not necessary. Not really.
yeah, I need that equipment. I'm going to go buy it. But like, hey, you need to hire an employee. I'm not ready for that.
Yeah. And that's
It's a
the,
default
that was,
answer.
yeah. And that's, early on, we experienced that early on, it's not a great situation. And I really wish we knew that, at that time, because I feel like that would have helped our partner relationship that we had early on. And, he may still be here with us if that was something that we knew about.
Yeah. And I just want to touch on this for just a few minutes for anyone out there that's in a partnership or looking to start one of these businesses with a partner. This is a golden rule of advice that I can give you because I've owned partnerships. I own partnerships with my brother. I mean, you want to talk about getting gritty, do it with a family member, right? You have to, but like in a partnership, you have to determine the roles and responsibilities, not of you and your partner, but what the company needs.
Hmm.
Like the company needs marketing, the company needs sales, the company needs estimates, the company needs operations, material ordering. And then once you have that whole list of what your company needs, then you can define the roles and departments to each partner. And we're not
Yeah,
looking for a 50-50 split, right? We're looking for the best man for the job.
absolutely. Yes.
Like, oh, I'm doing 8 tasks, so you can take the other 2. No, you might have to take all 10, and he might have
Hmm.
6
Yep.
because you're the best man. But you determine who's that. And what I tell everybody is like, if you're in charge of that department, you're the 51% owner.
Hmm.
You have the final say. And if your
Yeah.
partner's the 51% owner in on job site operation, he has the final say. You have a voice, but his word at the end of the day is what you're going with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. 100%. And that's something that, so so it was me, my wife, and our partner. And I think that was one of our issues early on that we figured out finally, but inevitably it was kind of a little too late, I believe. But, you know, you taking on the initial sequence of getting the ball rolling on those topics that are assigned to you, you know, that's your job. You figure out enough information to where you can share with your team. Then you can then everybody can kind of pick and adjust whatever from there. But whenever everybody is trying to make the first initial decisions on everything, it gets chaotic, and you get feel like, well, I'm doing all this, you're not doing your part, and the resentment starts and stuff like that, and it's not a good situation to be in.
no, and I use the example of like being a child, right? Like I asked my mom, "Hey, can I go stay over at Chris's house tonight?" I don't know. Ask your dad. Sweet, dad. Mom said I can stay at Chris's if you said it's okay. Like you find a different way to say it, right? So you can be like, "Yeah, if
Right.
she said it's fine, and I'm okay with it." And then she's like, "I never said that. I said to ask your dad." And like, what happens is when you don't have an end authority in a department, the kids start
Hmm.
running the kids start running the house.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, it's important to do all that process like you and I are doing. Calm, cool, collected, normal conversation.
Hmm.
Can't be in the heat of it. Like, well, damn it, you're in charge of marketing now. Like, you can't be that. It can't be that. Like, it's got to be laid out in advance because you got to look at this as the cornerstone. So during those fights, you can both say, hey, the organizational chart has you in charge of marketing. If you're struggling with that, we can talk about it, but don't blame this on me because I didn't get
Hmm.
the Google ads up and running for the company. Right. And
Right.
like I get it, it happened, but take ownership. Let's find a solution collectively. Let's move forward, or let's rearrange the organization where I take over marketing and you found that you're better at bookkeeping. Like, who knows?
Right. Yeah, no, it's a necessity for sure. knowing your role and sticking to your role, and if somebody, if that's not to say that, if somebody needs help in their area that you can't go help them as long
Right.
as, but you got to understand that you're not the one taking the lead, you
Right.
know, you're just there to help.
Yep. And yeah, even though you are the business owner, like we've determined that this is your department.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, it- it's so imperative, and I wish I knew that when I was in my 20s, because I was
Yeah.
the go-getter, right? Like if something in the business needed to get done, I just would go do it.
Yeah.
And then what happened was my partner, which is actually my brother, just started going, it doesn't matter, Ryan's going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So not only did I have to take on more responsibility, but I kind of crushed his desire
Yeah.
to be doing it, because he's like, doesn't matter how I do it, Ryan's going to do it differently. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that, like you said, partnerships. My wife is half owner. Actually, she's 51% owner. But that's me being early on. That was a noticeable, um, what do you call it? Not a bad trait of mine, I guess you'd call it. I was so nitpicky about everything just because, I had the mindset of, dress for the job you want, not the one that you have. And so, that's transferring that to our business. That's the image that I wanted to put off, a certain image. And me being the one with all the experience in this industry, I definitely wanted things to be a certain way, look a certain way, and stuff like that. And so I wanted to be there on the initial, on the front end of it, for whenever it was presented. It did look absolute 100% as should, but I also had all these other things to tend to as well.
right.
And it was and so yeah, burnout sets in fairly fast whenever you've got your hand in every aspect of everything going on.
It sure does. And like, here's the litmus test, right? Can you make any money as a company if you're gone for 10 days?
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
You know,
Not in that way, not that way anyways.
that's what I'm saying. Like, if your answer is no to that question, then you need to take
Hmm.
an introspective look at yourself and ask yourself, why am I so hands on, and why can't I allow the team, or why can't I build the team so this thing becomes an engine
Hmm.
and not my personal treadmill?
Absolutely. And that's not even to mention all the issues that you create also with your spouse going
Yeah,
into it as well.
because I'm going to guess, being partners with your wife, that there's been numerous times that work doesn't stop at the dinner table.
No, absolutely not. And it's an issue.
And
I mean, it's hard to turn off. It's absolutely hard to turn off, but it happens. We've definitely learned that for sure. Like there's a time limit. Sometimes there are still instances where, like, hey, I'm sorry, I've got to get this done. I'm not going to be home or whatever. But or hey, I'm sorry. It's 9 o'clock at night, but tomorrow morning I need you to take care of this first thing. And and there's still little arguments and stuff, but we're definitely a whole lot better than we have been.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, I talked to a father and son. I need to follow up to see if they've implemented any of that, but like, it was really affecting the home life,
Yeah.
and then, like, I did some boundary workshop with them, teaching them how to set boundaries and look at people and all that. And we came to the realization that, like, when you sit down to have dinner, nobody wants to hear what's going wrong. Like,
Yeah.
they know what's going wrong. They're in the business too with you. Right?
Hmm.
Like that. Let's take a break and have a boundary that I'd rather not say a word and just eat dinner in silence than talk about
Yeah.
work. Like, if I can't
Yeah.
do anything, if I have to talk about work, then we'll just sit in silence. But we got to
Yeah.
create a boundary that dinner table is off limits, because it also affects the mother/wife.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And then runs off into the kids, and oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a good situation.
Yeah. We were just talking this morning that my buddy I was telling you about earlier, that excavation owner, and he's just like, yeah, I'm really struggling with being present even when I'm there because I'm always thinking about work.
Yeah. And that's that part sucks about owning a business because it is hard to turn it off.
Yeah.
Whenever it's your family that depends on it also, you're doing it for your family, but you're also trying to get away from it for your family also at the same time.
And isn't that the irony of it? I'm doing it for my family,
Yeah.
so therefore I'm giving up my family to do it for my family.
Yeah.
Like
It's it's a fact.
yeah.
It's a vicious cycle sometimes.
Yeah, I was just telling him about this technique that I learned reading books years ago. I couldn't even tell you the name of the book. I read it in, but the power of stress, like you can literally reduce it by almost 50%. I think it's an arbitrary number just by recognizing the stress that you're having, not trying to fix it, not
Right.
just doing nothing, just going, wow, I'm stressed out because I'm not enjoying time with my child while I'm not working because I'm thinking about work. Like, just
Yeah.
recognize it. Like half that stress goes away just because you recognize it.
Yeah. It's
And then accept it, right? Okay, this is how it is. Like my emotions and my feelings are this way because I'm doing this. Like that's non-negotiable. So you just have to accept it. And then you can start questioning yourself. What
yeah.
makes me feel like I'm not enough that I can't even enjoy 4 hours with my kid? Or what makes me do this? Or what makes me like, that's the process.
Hmm.
Recognize, accept, and then question is what I always say.
Hmm.
That's what I do. And if you do it enough, it's very awkward, right? Because you've never done it before. You're not confident in it. It sounds stupid. You're talking to yourself. But if you do it enough times, though, you start to go, "Ooh, man, I'm starting to feel that stress."
Yeah.
Because we're to the last day of the project and we might go over.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess that would be considered reverse engineering your stress, kind
It
of.
is. It,
Yeah.
yeah. But you
And
can't
it
figure
creeps
out
up
a
on you. You don't even
solution.
realize it.
What's that?
I said because it does. It creeps up on you. You don't even realize it until it's just until there's an elephant in the room. You're like, oh man.
And that's where recognizing those cues is
Yeah.
so important. Just being self-aware of, oh, this is a
Hmm.
trigger for me, or like, oh, I can feel that when I start taking multiple deep breaths, I know I'm starting to get worked up. And just don't try to fix it. Just recognize it, and you'll watch like your levels will
Yeah.
minimize. Like that tension will minimize. So you can actually be free to work, find a solution, and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, Luke, I was looking forward to this episode, but this might be one of my favorite conversations I've had in 2 years. Like we are lockstep in a lot of mindset, and we've got different point of views, so different people hear the same message from a different tone.
Yeah.
Like this is I could talk to you and for a whole evening.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, especially in the not necessarily just the industry, but just owning a business. I mean, there's definitely a lot to talk about. You can figure out the world's problems and it take for the rest of the week, I'm sure.
Amen. And I just learned after being in business for 20 some years, it all starts with you.
Yeah,
Take care of yourself, grow and learn something new every day, not about work, just about you. Like try to be 1% better as a person.
yeah, and that's the main thing. Just try to be better. The version of you tomorrow, you should strive to be better than you were today.
Right. But like disassociate from I'm going to be 1% better at writing estimates tomorrow.
Yeah,
Like no, be 1% better person.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as a
I'm
whole.
not going to eat French fries tomorrow. I'm going to work out. I'm going to read 10 minutes. And if I don't like reading, I'm going to listen to a podcast, not about business, but about self-development.
Mm,
I'm going to learn, oh, there's techniques for managing stress. I want to start reading about that or watching YouTube videos on that. Like find a way to just become a better person.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
You become
And
much more aware in your business after that.
yeah. And sometimes it's just taking a break altogether. I had to do that. I had to take a break from podcasts, LinkedIn, stuff like that for a little while just because I was starting to compare myself.
Yep.
And that's um it if at first it's like, oh man, yeah, I'm right there neck and neck with somebody that I view as oh shoot is a well-rounded individual who's accomplished quite a bit, and then after a while you get like, oh man, well I'm lacking here and I'm lacking here, and then you can really beat yourself up over it.
Oh, 1,000%. You got to go learn that you're only competing with yourself.
Yeah, well, because I mean, people are only going to show whatever looks the best, anyways.
Ugh.
There's
That's
very few vulnerable social media posts or promotional videos and stuff like that.
yeah.
You're only going to show your best side, anyways, and so
Yeah, it's no shock that the correlation in like the mental disturbed and of the youth has a massive increase the same time social media has a usage increase.
oh, absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Because like especially when you're that young, like all you know is to compare.
Yeah, yeah, it's a meter. It's like a gauge. Like
Yeah.
where am I at socially, or whatever the case may be. Where I should be
Mm-hmm.
here. In your measuring your success, whatever it is. It's yeah. Sometimes it's just good to get away from every single bit of it, and like you said, just be better than you were the day before as
Yeah.
a person.
Yeah. Like we had a video, a YouTube short go viral. And and for me, if I were to say, yeah, man, like we're in excavation, this is an attachment being used in the dirt. Like to me, a viral video is like 100, 200,000 views, right? That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
We had almost 5 million views.
Oh wow.
Couldn't tell you what we did. Couldn't tell you why it happened. The video was online 2 months before it went bananas. I take no ownership of saying I can make your video go viral. But I
Right.
remember we were talking in a meeting after that, and like we were all excited, like how cool is this? It's a neat thing. Our users are up, and I just quickly interjected. I'm like, but let's not make this distraction the goal,
Yeah.
right? Like adding 3,000 subscribers to YouTube in 3 months, where it took us 2 years to do that in the past, is awesome.
Yeah.
But it doesn't generate the revenue or the momentum that we need as a company.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Like
100%.
don't get caught up in the I had on the tip of my tongue on the I'm not going to think now. I'm definitely not going to come up with like, but don't get caught up in like the beauty matrix of it. Like, oh yeah, we have
Yeah.
5 million people watch this video. Like that. What does that do? How
Yeah,
does that
it
make us a better
boosts your
company?
confidence. I mean, it boosts your confidence and stuff, but I mean, really, like then you start chasing that. Like you said, that's not revenue.
Right.
That's not profit, and that's the main goal. Uh, yeah, that's what is it, like a euphoric feeling or
Yeah. Vanity
uh
metrics. That's what I was looking for. Don't start
there you go.
chasing the vanity metrics.
Yeah, yeah, and that's not what's important. It does make you feel better, more confident about your situation. Just being able to reach, so many people or whatever compared to other people. But comparison, yeah, sometimes it'll make you feel good, but you do it a lot, it'll definitely take away for sure.
Yeah, I just find now that when I see everybody, it's like my news feed on Facebook, which I don't look at very often, is full of a lot of business owners, whether they're in excavation or online businesses and all that. And like, yeah, they always love sharing their success stories.
Hmm.
And I make it a point in my head, and even sometimes out loud, the first thing I say when I read one of those is like, "Good for them,
Oh yeah,
good for
absolutely.
them."
It's not a
Not
competition.
God, I wish that was me. Good for
Yeah,
them.
yeah, absolutely.
And if I really want what they have, then I'm going to go study how they did it so I can duplicate it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So,
I don't know.
man, Luke, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your afternoon. And I see you're joining us from your truck today. So I don't know if you're out hunting or working, but one of the two is my guess.
It's a pretty gloomy day. I just kind of making my rounds, and I just figured just hang out in here today. We got a kid home, and a little yapping dog inside the house. So I figured this probably be the best place to do it.
Well, this worked out perfect, man. You sound great. You got a great background behind there in the windows. So this was awesome.
Good deal. I appreciate it.
Yep, I thank you too. And all you guys out there listening, don't forget skidsteernation.com, your home for high quality American made skid steer attachments. If you like the content, you guys have been getting value out of this, and you're growing your business, please head over to skidsteernation.com to support us so that we can support you with the proper attachments to do the work. Also, we talked a lot of business today, different concepts, mindsets, strategies, estimating. Like there was a ton of information. This may be an episode that you want to listen to twice, especially if you're hitting that glass ceiling or you're newer in business or you're frustrated because of a lack of systems or processes. Listen to this one twice. Or head over to groundbreakinggrowth.com and schedule a discovery call with me. We can talk about your business and see if you're a good fit to have us help consult, coach, mentor, whatever word you want to use, and help you grow your business. That's groundbreakinggrowth.com. So Luke, thanks again for joining us today. And guys, until next week, keep the grind alive and God bless the USA.